Death, Famine, War, and Pestilence, aka the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse in the New Testament, and also the Horsemen of Apocalypse in Marvel Comics. These 4 lucky few are mortals and non-mortals chosen specifically by Apocalypse to be his right-hand men and women. He would augment their powers and give them some sweet upgrades in the form of celestial tech. Have I caught your attention? What is going on, all you nerdy folk out there? My name is Jack, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Now, I'm sure you've already guessed it, but today we're going to be taking a look at some of the Horsemen of Apocalypse. I've tried to make it fair and feature 2 of each, so hopefully y'all like my picks for today. Now, if you like hearing us talk about villains and their underlings, then I highly suggest that you head over to our Top 10 Supervillains playlist right after this to get your fix. With that in mind, let's talk Horsemen, everyone. Number 10. Famine, Rory Campbell. Dr. Rory Campbell was a psychologist who was good friends with the scientist Moira McTaggart. He worked with her for a while on Muir Island during the time that the mutant team Excalibur was stationed there. However, getting to that island was no easy task because of a huge storm that almost killed him. He was rescued by none other than Rachel Summers, and from there on, he was somehow able to discover the existence of an alternate universe where he was known as the mutant hunter Ahab. Determined to do whatever he could to prevent this from happening, he worked alongside Excalibur to capture villains. However, this ended up costing him his legs thanks to the villain's spoor. Scared of his quote-unquote destiny, he left Excalibur and took up a position where he was helping mutants instead. An unknown amount of time later, and for reasons no one really knows, he was captured by the villain Apocalypse and transformed into the Horseman called Famine. In this capacity, he fought the X-Men but managed to escape before Apocalypse was actually defeated. Check him out in his first appearance in 1993's Excalibur number 72, or skip on ahead to his time as Famine in 2000's X-Men Volume 2, number 96. Number 9. Famine, Autumn Rolfson. Growing up a mutant in Cleveland, Ohio, Autumn struggled with an eating disorder and was in and out of hospitals pretty frequently. She struggled so much because her mutant ability would disintegrate food, so needless to say, eating was pretty tough for her. She felt alienated from not only the world but her parents as well, and Apocalypse used this to his advantage. One day he waited in a room and told Autumn that she could get revenge on her parents and those who hated her. She agreed and was teleported away to his ship, where Apocalypse made her his horseman Famine. During their first mission, the Horsemen were torn, not wanting to take orders from each other, and battled X-Factor in Central Park, where they were defeated by Iceman. After the 4th Horseman, Death, was revealed, Apocalypse had the Horsemen battle each other to find the leader, and Death beat them all and was chosen as the leader. Later on, Famine battled Marvel Girl and easily defeated her, and as a reward, Apocalypse teleported her to America's Farm Belt so she could just disintegrate the crops and cattle, but was soon after defeated by Captain America. She later appeared alongside War and a new Death, where they kidnapped Jean Grey and Cyclops and handed them over to Apocalypse, who was actually Mr. Sinister in disguise at the time. The X-Men and X-Factor sought out the Horsemen, and though Famine took out Beast, she was quickly beaten by Quicksilver. Presumably now, Autumn has since reverted back to her normal self and was sent back to her parents in Ohio. Check her out for yourself in 1987's X-Factor number 12. Number 8. Famine, Sunfire. SHIRO Yoshida, aka Sunfire, became Famine after they were presumed dead after Rogue accidentally absorbed all his memories and powers. In actuality, SHIRO was taken to a hospital and kept under watchful guard by members of Clan Yoshida and the Hand, who were trying to convince him to accept a prosthetic limb. He received a visit from the newly resurrected Apocalypse, who gave him an enticing offer to join him in quote-unquote saving mankind, in return for which Apocalypse would restore his powers and his lost limbs. SHIRO agreed. However, during the process of being transformed into Famine, SHIRO's heroic side returned and he knew what he was doing was wrong. He struggled with his choice and thought about escaping, but he didn't want to leave the mutant Gazer to suffer, who was also being turned into a horseman at the time. SHIRO finally decided that he couldn't let Gazer suffer more and tried to save him, but he was too late and they were both turned into Horsemen of Apocalypse. During his time as Famine, SHIRO attacked the X-Men using his flares to give their eyes and brain imagery that made them feel like they were starving. During the X-Men's battle with Apocalypse, Gazer as War was killed while Gambit as Death and Polaris as Pestilence were captured. Despite Apocalypse being defeated and having escaped, SHIRO was still under his mental control and tried to save his former horsemen from the X-Men. Why not check out SHIRO's story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1970's X-Men number 64. Number 7. War, DEATHBIRD. Heir to the Shi'ar's Empire's throne, Khaleesi Normani is known as DEATHBIRD, a member of the Shi'ar royal family and the sister of Charles Xavier's one-time lover, Lilandra. She was recruited by Apocalypse to serve as his horseman War after renouncing the throne to her sister, who in turn made her the representative of the Kree Empire. She retrieved the living monolith along with X-Men Bishop for Apocalypse to use in the 12. DEATHBIRD and Sunfire as Famine were teleported by Mikhail Rasputin after Apocalypse's defeat, and she was just kind of left in space. While in space, she began a relationship with the time-displaced Bishop, and the two ended up confronting each other over a plan to defeat the Rule, and DEATHBIRD was presumably dead after being ejected from the spaceship. She was later later seen rescued by her sister, however she was put directly in prison as she was seen as a very big threat for the throne. Check her out for yourself starting all the way back in 1997's Miss Marvel number 9. Number 6. War the Hulk. At one point in time, the Jade Giant himself was manipulated into becoming one of Apocalypse's horsemen. The Hulk was nursing wounds from a brutal defeat and only agreed to serve Apocalypse if he would remove the shrapnels from Hulk's brain from that previous battle. Under the mental control of Apocalypse, he battled the Absorbing Man and the Juggernaut, but they had been sent by the NWO with Rick and Janice Jones to stop these new incarnation of the Hulk, who was using the power of the Celestials. He nearly killed the Absorbing Man and the Juggernaut, but Rick jumped in and the Hulk swung at him and just injured him terribly. Seeing that crippled body of his best friend caused the Hulk to break free of that mind control and flee in shame, and that was kind of the end of Hulk's time as War. Why not check out what events led up to this by checking out the Hulk's entire story, starting with his first appearance in 1962's Incredible Hulk number 1. Number 5. Pestilence Polaris. Before becoming Pestilence, Lorna Dane aka Polaris was classified as an alpha level mutant thanks to her ability to manipulate magnetism much like Magneto can. After the House of M event, she actually lost her powers, and this is one of the reasons why Apocalypse was able to convince her to join him. She was dropped inside of Apocalypse's Sphinx by Dap, and Apocalypse made her an offer of power in the form of becoming one of his horsemen. Now initially she refused, but eventually she was tempted enough to actually accept the offer. As Pestilence, Lorna had celestial technology grafted to her spine by Apocalypse, which somehow reactivated her X gene and her powers. Mind wiped, she ingested viruses from the World Health Organization and was attempting to create a meta plague. In the climactic battle between the X-Men, the Avengers, and Apocalypse, Wolverine discovered the choking Pestilence was Lorna herself. Havoc was able to resuscitate Lorna, having given a serum to protect him from the diseases present. She was recovering in the X-Mansion when Gambit and Sunfire returned to take her away. She arose and refused to go with them, and Polaris decided to leave that night to search for Apocalypse in Egypt. She went alone and was later hunted until Havoc and the new X-Men team saved her. Why not check out more of Lorna, starting with her first appearance in 1968's X-Men number 49. Number 4. Pestilence and Death, CALIBAN. Having always been a weaker mutant, CALIBAN took Apocalypse's offer to become a horseman because it meant that he would get a significant boost in power. He used his natural mutant gifts to help Apocalypse hunt down other mutants, and under the name Death, turned on his former allies Cyclops and Jean Grey and the rest of the X-Men. Later on, we see CALIBAN return as the horseman Pestilence, and he continued to do what he did best and track down and captured Cable and his alternate reality brother Nate Grey. Eventually, he was defeated during battle with the X-Men when they were teleported away by Mikhail Rasputin. Subsequently, CALIBAN tracked down Cyclops, who had merged with Apocalypse and who was struggling to keep the Eternal Mutant's essence in check. Apocalypse's psyche became dominant and released CALIBAN from his service. By that time, CALIBAN had once more begun reverting to his original naive self, and his intelligence faded until he possessed only a simple, animal-like mind. Now, all in all, CALIBAN remained a loyal horseman until his master turned on him for his constant failure. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1981's Uncanny X-Men number 148. Number 3. Death, Logan. During a space mission alongside his fellow X-Men, Logan was captured by Apocalypse and seamlessly replaced with a Skrull that took his place for a while and infiltrated the X-Men. Forced to fight Sabretooth for the mantle of the Horseman Death, Logan gave it his all and defeated his nemesis because he not only knew that Sabretooth would be too powerful with all that power, but he also believed that he would be able to withstand Apocalypse's programming. As the Horseman of Death, Wolverine completed several missions for Apocalypse and fought the Hulk. Meanwhile, the Skrull that replaced him tried to create a rift between the X-Men and their mentor, but was slain by the real Wolverine under Apocalypse's orders. After discovering that their teammate had been a Skrull that whole time, the X-Men found out that the real Wolverine was Apocalypse's horseman and decided to help him out. Under the control of Apocalypse, Wolverine fought the X-Men ferociously in his death persona, but Psylocke, Archangel, Kitty Pryde, and Jubilee helped him break free from Apocalypse's control. Now I'm sure you know the drill by now, so check out Wolverine's story starting with 1974's Incredible Hulk, number 181. Number 2. Death, Warren Worthington III. After losing his angel wings during the Morlock Massacre, Warren spiraled and went into a deep depression. This eventually led him to accept Apocalypse's offer of new metal wings in exchange for him becoming the Horseman Death, a role that he would continue to serve on and off again for quite some time. Warren was brainwashed and Apocalypse warped his body and mind into his own Angel of Death upon his celestial ship and placed him into his new team of horsemen as Death. Warren's skin turned blue and he grew a set of biometallic wings from his back that he could retract and also fire dart blades with a neurotoxin. Not only that though, his new wings could also fly higher, faster, and were razor sharp as well. Apocalypse had the horsemen battle each other to find the leader, and Death beat them all, becoming the leader. As Death, Warren fought the rest of X Factor and captured them, and after X Factor's defeat, the horsemen were sent into Manhattan to wreak some havoc. Warren was shocked back to his senses after Iceman faked his death at Warren's hands by having him destroy an ice sculpture in the shape of Bobby. After their defeat of Apocalypse, his sentient ship crash landed on their complex and X Factor began living in it. Now Warren eventually left the team but later returned to X Factor as the somber, brooding Archangel, left struggling with the urge to kill due to the influence of his wings. Check out more of his story starting with 1963's X-Men, number 1. Number 1, the Final Horseman. Comprised of Jeb Lee, a Confederate spy during the Civil War that can transmit cancer as Famine, Decimus Furious, a Roman gladiator worshipped and feared as the dark god Minotaur as War, Ichisumi, a Japanese woman with the ability to control insects as Pestilence, and Sanjar Javid, the son of the then King of Persia and thief with the ability to transmit terminal diseases as Death. These 4 make up Apocalypse's Final Horseman and act as the contingency plan that Apocalypse had prepared in case of any ultimate failure. The Horseman's first test was to protect a recently revived Apocalypse from S-Force, and the X-Force under the command of Wolverine and Archangel led a mission to kill Apocalypse, who relocated to the blue area of the moon, but the team were quickly defeated by the assembled Final Horseman. Now in the end they did end up failing though, and their master was killed by Phantom X. They reappeared later in service to Apocalypse's newly risen successor Archangel, who chose Psylocke as Death. Check them out for yourself, starting with 2010's Uncanny X-Force number 1. That'll be it for this video, everyone. Let me know your favorite Horsemen of Apocalypse in the comments below, and maybe we'll get around to featuring them in part 2 of this video. Now if you haven't already, subscribe to Top 10 Nerd to stay up to date on all things nerdy, and while you're at it, why not ring that notification bell so you know whenever we upload a video. As always, my name is Jack, thank you all so much for watching, and make sure to stay nerdy, my friends.